Caro Mario, thank you for this wonderful conference and for my invitation. Among the many analyses concerning the current emergency of illegal immigration to Italy, there happens to be some improbable comparison between what Ellis Island represented to immigrants who reached America from around the world and what the island of Lampedusa represents to poor people desperately crossing the Mediterranean Sea. Some authors presume to find and demonstrate affinities between the two world events, but only those who operate from an anti-American ideology can believe this is workable. All who start their analysis with an historic perspective grasp only the deep differences between the two phenomena. If we want evidence of what is common to these two events, the only things we can affirm is that both are islands. I don't believe it's possible to push this analysis further. In order to separate Ellis Island and Lampedusa, first of all, there is an institutional evidence. Ellis Island is the predetermined site set up by the American government to administer over the immigration procedure. Everything here is codified. The migrants divided for gender receive an official entry pass. There is a medical exam, identity test, examination of identity and political condition, and mandatory hospital stays for those with transitory disease. Here, the immigrants meet those who will vouch for them and care for them while they establish themselves. And here, young women meet their promised spouses, marrying them in very little time. Finally, Ellis Island is the organized apparatus for the project of social engineering that has been formulated in order to build a new America and to support the great development process characterizing the American economy during the transition of the 19th and to the 20th century. Lampedusa is nothing similar. Under the institutional profile, it is merely the site where the Italian government runs migrants admission without any program nor any finality. Despite anything else, it was not the Italian government that chose this site. Lampedusa was selected by criminal organization as the nearest place of access to carry immigrants arriving in Europe. Women, men, children, destroyed in body and soul, may reach the island still alive. However, very often tragic events end their hopes, and 4,000 of them transformed the Mediterranean Sea into a great liquid cemetery. Of course, the hope of a new life is a common feeling among immigrants of all ages. But there is a big difference between what is going on now and the immigration of the past century. In those days, everybody left to meet many variables, not knowing the future, but assured of survival. Now, he who leaves the North African coast for Europe is not only betting on his ability to establish himself in a foreign land, but consciously or not, is obliged to gamble on his very life. And if he wins in reaching Lampedusa, he has yet won nothing. Not much of his own condition has changed. All who escape death reaching Lampedusa are welcomed by improbable guardians who send them to large room covered with mattresses as damp as the boat crossing. Here, those who have energy occupy and defend their space. The others share what remains. Among them, there are often also criminals who guided the boats, but the line between them and their victims is not visible in the silent behavior of all. Until 2002, some guards attempt to summarily identify immigrants for registration, dividing economy immigrants and political refugees. But without any papers, this operation was really very difficult. When the number of immigrants became unsupportable, the authority and Comar decided to transfer groups of immigrants to other similar admission centers springing up daily in Sicily and in other regions of South Italy with the economic support of the government. Nothing has been prepared. Only an emergency law decided the destiny of everyone. And in this confusion, many immigrants escaped, reaching other European countries. After strong protests by many European member states, an Italian law of 2002 tried to remediate creating the SPRAR, which means Protection System, Asylum Seekers and Refugees. The new institution improved immigrants' logistics a little, but the procedure to recognize refugee status became more complicated and was impossible to carry out quickly. So, huge masses of immigrants flocked to Lampedusa and other countries at Europe's external borders, leading to the more serious migration crisis in the recent years. Lampedusa thus become the symbol of the crisis in the process of supplying spectacles every day of masses of men and women shut up in enclosures and cadavers lined up on its marvelous beaches. Never, like in this moment, could the image of Lampedusa be so far from that of Ellis Island. Ellis Island has been the island of tear and hope, Lampedusa, the island of pain and death. But now, the question is, can things change? Is it possible to transform Lampedusa into a new Ellis Island? We can easily wish it to be so, but it would be very, very difficult to realize. 10 years ago, during the Peace Study Conference organized in Messina, at Messina University, my department affirmed the possibility of submitting part of Lampedusa as extraterritorial space under European sovereignty, governed by a committee of European states delegates members. In the proposal, the goal of this committee could be to welcome the emigrants, sending them forward according to their expectation. But in harmony with a well-organized plan of social engineering, the committee could provide the immigrants with a provisory visa, and the destination states will decide whether to make the visa official after individual examinations. Obviously, here we are talking about an hypothesis dealing with what might be possible. And as possible today, it must be based on rational criteria compatible with existing law and the political moods of individual states. Italy, for example, has no desire to yield its sovereignty over any piece of its national territory. We posed the question of extraterritoriality to a sample of 30 Italian European parliamentarians from different political backgrounds, but only one, which broader view, accepted this hypothesis, placing, however, the condition that the reception station be more than one and located in border-crossing European countries along the northern Mediterranean coast. Most parliamentarians are of the opinion that Lampedusa should remain entirely Italian and that only the Italian government should be delegated to task of selecting and placing migrants in other European countries, with the assistance of an European Union advisory body. In other words, for the latter, Italy should become a sort of Minos, famously described by Dante Alighieri, with the task of judging and choosing the final destination. There, Minos stand, hideous and growling, examining the sins of each newcomer. With a coiled tile, he judges and displaces. And this, of course, is unlikely to be accepted by other European countries. But at the present, the reason that concentrate masses of migrants at the southern edges of Europe, particularly Italy, Greece, and Spain, is the complicated operation of mechanisms designed to grant the status of political refugee, and in particular, identification of a competent member state to supervise the practice. The status of refugee is recognized by the Geneva Convention, signed by most of Western countries, but I don't want to speak about this, about in which way the Convention of Geneva is operate through the several regulation of Dublino. The last one is Dublino III. I will do it in the proceedings. And I don't want to speak about the actual crisis. Many of you know what happened since the decision of Austria to build the 600 meters wall. I want to only say now that in Europe, in this moment, there is a great confusion that threatens to bring about a resurgence of nationalism and to undermine the very existence of European Union. In this situation, at the end of August of this year, the European Commission announced the creation of the hotspots to be located on the European coast: Piraeus in Greece, Taranto in Italy, and 5 in Sicily. Lampedusa, of course, Catania, Augusta, Pozzallo, Porto Empedocle e Trapani. In other words, Sicily becomes the experimental laboratory for the new reception policy of the European Union. How works the hotspots? In each center, a commission has the role of minus. It consists of experts chosen by the border police of the individual states, by the police of the external frontier of the European Union, and all the police organizations talk about this, Claudio Rossi. As you see, it's a role with a composition very similar to that contained in the proposal advanced by us 10 years ago, with only one difference. In the hotspots are moving without any engineering social planning, and without this, it's not possible to manage the big problems that in this moment are. Despite of all, according to the few notice that we know, because it's very new organization, what happened in the hotspots? Happens that the majority of immigrants, in an attempt to avoid repatriation, do not reveal their identity, preventing their fingerprints being taken and being photographed. So, are very, I don't know why they created this new institution, and the situation is worse than before. I don't know if and how it's possible to change this situation. I think that whatever the hypothesis chosen, what appears necessary, first of all, is a genuine welcoming project scared by the entire community, a project which is able to balance immigration flows and disperse an equal burden on the individual states. And this would have to be not only political compatible. It would also distribute the difficulties and the opportunities arising from the flow of incoming migrants. But with this scheme, there is a big problem. Europe does not have a government able to legislate over national states. So, to launch this mechanism and to avoid the disparities, what is first needed is that all member states accept comparison of their national law and act to harmonize them. Impossible. This goal is really difficult because of great difference in thinking and the internal law that exists today among the member states. The Europe doesn't exist. The political Europe doesn't exist. So, as long as the European policy does not make significant gains in building European politics that leads to a legitimate government by the European Parliament, one which is capable of uniform decision-making for all its member states, Lampedusa is destined to remain what is today, and Italy is destined to alone support the pressure of rising illegal immigration. Thank you.